Breakneck through the Bible 2017-2018, class number 17. Okay, so we are at the beginning of chapter 3. Right? Genesis chapter 3, verse number 1, page 15. Right? And so we ended off last week talking about right, now the serpent was cunning beyond any beasts of the field that Hashem God had made, and he said to the woman, perhaps God said, you should not eat of the tree, any tree of the garden. So we talked about that every sin that mankind has till today, every sin is rooted in the story of the Garden of Eden. Okay, so we're going to learn the cause of all sin in this world. It's rooted in there are three sins that took place in the Garden of Eden. These three sins actually encompass all the sins in the world today come from these three sins. Okay, so and we're going to see that the serpent is going to pick on the woman. Right? What was the woman's name? Isha. It was woman, right? So there was a name. She was called woman, right? Why was she called woman? She was called woman because the mother of all living things is Chava, which is Eve, that she only gets named after the sin. So right now she's called Isha because she is just the feminine version of the man, right? Of Ish, right? And this other right, she was taken from man. That's why she's called Isha. She's a woman, right? And she's just the second half to the man, right? So they're the halves of each other. Okay, and so the snake picks on her. Why does the snake pick on her?
Easier mark.
It's an easier mark, right? So okay, and it's fascinating. Why is that? I'll tell you something really cool about women. Guys, listen up. Taylor, close your ears. I'll tell you something amazing that God makes it. God makes it that women trust men. Okay? Right? That God makes it that women trust men. Right? Why does God make that?
Well, it wouldn't be because later we're destined to want for our husband because we're not at that point yet. But is it because the men were the brunts that went out and killed and we had to trust them to do that?
That happens to be interesting. I say the reason why God made it that women have to trust men is because when men apologize, they'll believe us. Sorry, I didn't mean it. Oh, okay. Right? So it's amazing. Isn't God smart? It's amazing. Right? Now, I always wonder why he made it the way to get in trouble in the first place. But I think that's because men are from Mars and you're being home the whole day, you're laughing. Huh? You spent 20, right? You spent 12 hours with your wife today and look at that. Okay, so right, so it's amazing, right? And it's funny. Why does God make it that way?
You gonna give us the real reason?
The real reason, right, is because men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and God made it this way because God wants us to learn to be thinking about the other person, right? And so therefore, right, how does God teach us to think about somebody else? So God makes it that when you communicate, right, that the only way to communicate with your wife is to learn to speak Venetian, right? Because we speak Martian, men speak Martian, women speak Venetian. So the only way for a man to speak to a woman is him to learn Venetian, and which means that a guy has to translate all his Martian thoughts into Venetian thoughts, right? Okay, and if you learn to do that, you'll be a very happy man. If you don't, you'll be very miserable, right? And so what happens is, so God teaches us that we always have to be thinking about the other person. Now we always have to be learning to be thinking about the other person And that way, if we think about the other person, so then, right, we get out of the shell of being it's all about me, and we understand that the world is not about me, it's about giving, right? About becoming godly and becoming a giver rather than a taker. And we learn to become a giver than a taker, then we become godly. Right? So the only way to do this, so he gave us a nice helpmate. Now what happens is that she keeps on hearing things that we never said. Because in her world, where she comes from, when we say things like we speak in Mars, is very offensive to people in Venus. Right? So you have to translate, right? You have to translate what, right, the language in what you're speaking in, and you have to learn to speak in the other person's language. Right? And so that's right. So that's right. The first step in learning how to think about other people. So what happens is, so the snake goes ahead, and the snake goes ahead, and the snake picks on the woman because he knows that he'll be able to convince her easier than the guy. Right? Because God made it that women believe men, and there's actually you see this in the Torah. There's a fascinating law in the Torah, which is quite an amazing thing. The Torah says as follows. The Torah says, if a male goes ahead and rapes a female, okay, he has to marry her, right? Pay 100 shekel fine, and then he has to marry her for the rest of his life, right? He has to marry her the rest of. Thank you. Yeah, he has to marry her the rest of his life. He cannot have her, right? She doesn't have to marry him, but he has to marry her if she wants it. Right? Right? That's what happens. Then the Torah says the following law. And this is the law that's amazing. Let's say he seduces her. What's the law then?
She has to marry him.
What?
She has to marry him.
She has to marry him. No, she does not. If he seduces her, so now he only has to pay 50 shekel, okay, and he has to marry her. He has to marry her, right, if she wants to, right? But again, right, that's what he has to do. Now, there's a big problem with this law. What's the problem with this law? Aren't you talking about two consenting adults? And if it's two consenting adults, why does anyone have to pay anything? We're talking about where they both agreed to it. Nobody was forcing anybody to do anything.
No, the rape law is not by consensus.
What?
The seducer.
The seducer.
Oh.
The seducer reaped by consensus. Right? So why does he have to pay and why does he have to marry her? It's two consenting adults.
Was created to be influenced and trusting towards the man.
Oh, so very good.
She's not responsible.
And very good. So that's exactly the idea. The idea the Torah is teaching you is that there's no such thing as two consenting adults because God makes it that she trusts him, and if she trusts him, so then he's taking advantage of a mismatch, so to speak, he's taking advantage of something that God put into the creation, and therefore he didn't do it forcefully, but he convinced her. So therefore he only has to pay 50 shekel and he has to marry her forever. Right? And so that's because that's what the Torah is teaching, that it's not such that they have two consenting adults. Therefore the snake goes ahead and attacks, right, the weakest link in the chain, right, the woman who is coded to believe the guy. Okay? That's right. That's how chapter 3 begins.
So we then know that the serpent is male based on that.
Yeah, because this was a male serpent. And we know it's a male serpent, not a female serpent.
Because she would have argued with the female.
Yeah, but if it was a female serpent, they would have gotten to first base. Okay, so good. So now the problem is that woman did not learn the first rule every mommy teaches her child. What does every mommy teach her child? Don't talk to strangers. Right? Don't talk to strangers. Right? And so therefore, as soon as a snake comes up, right, what should woman have said to the snake? Yeah, I don't talk to strangers. Right? Right? That should have been the first answer. Okay? That goes like this. Okay. So again, so chapter 3, verse verse number 1.
I missed again the whole interesting entry. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just my luck. You started exactly at 7:30.
That's it. I'm telling you, you got to be here on time, Waters.
I always try. I mean, I'm so upset that I'm late.
Alrighty, Scott, chapter 3, verse 1.
Now the serpent was cunning beyond any beast of the field that Hashem God had made. He said to the woman, did perhaps God say, you shall not eat of any tree of the garden?
Aha. He says to the woman, did perhaps God say, that one of the oldest pickup lines in the book. Is there any food around here besides peanuts? And what's the famous pickup line at the bars? And is there anything besides peanuts around here? Right? And so what does the snake says? Perhaps God says, should not eat any of the tree of the garden. Right? Like what's here to eat? Now it's interesting, by the way. I just want to point out something, because chapter 3, verse 1 says, now the earth was cunning beyond any beast of the field that Hashem God had made. How is God referred to over here? Hashem. And what is Hashem? Mercy. Right. So what's the Torah telling us? That when God created the serpent, what was the cause of creating the serpent? Mercy. Why is it mercy? Why does God start off with mercy?
Because when mercy and justice confront each other, mercy always.
Because remember, the evil inclination, right, was created by God, because that's our purpose in this world. Is that we have an evil inclination and we're not supposed to listen to it, right? So the creation of the evil inclination is an act of mercy, not an act of justice. Right? It's not that God's trying to trip us up. God's trying to put it out in front there that we have to go ahead and we have to make sure that we don't listen to it. Right? That's the Hashem God, right? That starts off with Hashem. Right? Is that he's going ahead and he's saying, right, you have an evil inclination, and your job is to make sure that you don't listen to the evil inclination. Okay? So the snake says, number 1, did God say, perhaps you should not eat of any tree of the garden? Go ahead, verse number 2.
The woman said to the serpent, of the fruit of any tree of the garden we may eat. Of the fruit of the tree which is in the center of the garden, God has said, you shall neither eat of it nor touch it, lest you die.
Oh, okay. So what does the woman say to the serpent?
You shall neither eat of it or touch it, but God only said eat of it.
Interesting. What does the woman say to the snake? Right? God said we can't eat or touch the tree in the field. And what did God say?
Still need it from it.
So why did the woman think God said don't touch?
Because Adam lied.
Interesting. So why does she think don't touch?
He added a buffer to make sure that she wouldn't touch it by saying she wasn't allowed to eat it or touch it.
So Adam had added in, right? The concept of you shall not touch it as well. Why did Adam add that in?
Prevent the temptation. The more you touch it, you will be more tempted to grab it.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, right? The more you touch it, the more you'll be tempted.
Right.
So Adam added on, don't even touch it, right? Now let me ask you a question. Was it right for Adam to add on to it, or was it wrong for Adam to add on to it?
Ultimately, it was wrong because it was once he got her to touch it and she knew that was not true, then she was like, oh, I can eat it too. So if he had never added that in, she would have just stuck with not eat it.
Nope.
But God said don't touch it. That should have been enough.
No,
right
God
there.
didn't say don't touch it.
Don't eat it, I mean.
Right?
So that should have been enough right there.
So why did Adam say don't touch it?
He was a chicken and he needed more of a buffer.
He's a chicken eating more of a buffer. But you would have had another problem just not eating from it.
If my rabbi said so.
I don't know. I find it hard to understand how God is right there and you're not terrified to not do what he says. I mean, we can't even see him. And
it's very fast. I mean, we're going to get to this, right? Because it's not, the woman gets taken down a path, right? And she runs through a bunch of different things that were set up to protect her. The first one was set up by... Let me ask you a question. Who here was in the army? Okay. When they would mark where a landmine is, would they just mark the little spot where you shouldn't step, or did they give you like a 3-foot circle around it?
They give you some space.
Why? Just mark where it is. We know we'll just be fine with that.
But you don't know where the exact spot is that would trigger it. You have to have more space.
Because
you have a bunch of dummies who would probably test it.
Actually, probably test it. Right? Again, but why? Because you make a bigger space around it in order to build a fence around it to protect it. By the way, the idea of building a fence, right? Where do we see the idea of building a fence?
On a house?
In the Torah. Okay, well, the house and the roof, right? But the fence itself is a protection. Good. But in the last couple of weeks, Torah portion.
Oh, the Mishkan?
No, okay, not the Mishkan. Good.
The Holy of Holies.
Then okay, that's enough. So when God told Moses people stood at Mount Sinai, and what did God say about when he stood at Mount Sinai?
Don't get close.
Don't get close to the mountain. If you touch the mountain, you're gonna die. And what does he tell Moshe to do? Build a fence around the mountain. Why? Because right?
Because people would be tempted.
People might be tempted and they're going to touch it, and so build a fence around it to protect them.
I want to get close to
Right? Building a fence, right? And by the way, the Torah commands the rabbis to actually make fences around the commandments. You know that? There's actually a commandment in the Torah given to the rabbis that they should make general safeguards for the commandments. There's another commandment that even if the rabbis didn't make a safeguard, that you should, if you have an area in which you fall short, you should go ahead and make your own safeguards. So let me give you an example. Give you an example. I had a student who once told me, he says, Rabbi, he says, you know, the Burger King on the corner of, I don't know, the Tollway and Tollway and Forest Lane, right? That's the best Burger King. And every time I drive by that Burger King, all I can think about is the Whopper. 99 cents for a Whopper? Well, that's like for Jews, that's a mitzvah to buy it. Right? And so they go, but she said, but that's when I go by, that's the one that gets me all the time. Right? All the other Burger Kings, I remember God says not to eat it, I just drive right by. But the one in the corner of the Tollway and the Forest, that's the Whopper that keeps on, it's a Burger King that keeps on getting me. So what would be a prudent way for the thing for this person to do?
Not go there. Not go past
Well,
that.
Not drive to Forest and the Tollway. Right? Right? So the Tollway doesn't, right? It's actually, right? Don't drive past that intersection. Right? If you need to go to Lowe's, right? Go down to Royal, right? Turn right on Royal, or go down to North Haven, turn right on North Haven, drive over to Inwood, and then come up Inwood and go to Lowe's. Because if you drive by the Burger King, you're going to cause yourself a lot of trouble. And so we are commanded to make our own fences on something that could potentially trip us up. Right? That's what we're commanded to do. We're commanded to do it personally, and we're commanded by God. The rabbis are commanded by God that they themselves should make fences for commandments. So who here made a fence? And making fences makes a lot of sense. So who here made a fence? Adam. So why didn't it work?
Oh,
How
because
come?
He spoke for God, not for himself.
Ooh, say it again. Very good. Say it again.
He said that God said it instead of...
Oh, what happened was, he said, God said you should neither touch of it or eat from it. God did not say that. So when you make a fence, you have to know what is the fence and what is the commandment. And since he didn't make that discrepancy, right? And therefore he goes ahead and he said, God said you shall not eat from it, or, right, do not touch from it or eat from it, right? And he made no discrepancy, so that was where it got into trouble.
But
Yeah.
if God knows what would tempt you,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't the boundary be implied as well?
What do you mean?
If he created you to want the Whopper, like, you smell that Whopper.
Right, then you're
and
toast.
He created that. So
Right.
he knows that's...
Okay, like this. Everybody has their challenges. There is nobody in this room, nobody, who doesn't have challenges. Nobody. We all have challenges. How do I know that? We're human. And that's what life is. Right? God gave us challenges, and our job is to overcome them. That's our job. God gave us each our evil inclination, and each of us are different, and each of us are special. Right? We're very special. We're also unique. We all have challenges. And our job is on my challenge, in my place where I have this challenge. My job is to go ahead and to make sure that I don't get tripped up by that challenge. Right? That's our job. And our job is to figure it out and to know it and to build a fence to protect us from going ahead and from falling into that hole, right, of being tripped up by it. Right? And that's what it means to be human. So the only mistake that Adam made over here was that he went ahead, right, or Adam or Eve, right, because it's not clear, right, is that they go ahead and the mistake was that they treated the fence like the law itself. So when you make a decree, when you make a fence, you have to know what is the fence and what is the commandment. Right? So I'll give you an example. Right? The Torah says you can't eat meat and milk mixed together. So what do we say? What do the rabbis came along and said? You know what? It's not enough not to just not eat meat and milk together. But we're going to make it that you have to wait 6 hours in between meat and milk. Right? They shouldn't even be anywhere near each other. Okay? Wait 6 hours. So, is that a fence or is that that's part of the commandment? It's a fence. Right? It's a fence. Right? Right? That's right. The fence, right? The fence, rabbis came along and the fence says, don't eat, right? Wait 6 hours between meat and milk. Right? And so therefore, my child, when my child was 18 months old, and they just ate a piece of cheese, and then all of a sudden along comes the hot dog walking in the door, and they want to eat from the hot dog, right? So at that point in time, I say, okay, no problem, right? Right, just make sure there's no cheese on your plate, right? Your hands are clean, you can have a hot dog. When my kid turns probably 4 or 5, right? Then I say, okay, after you eat dairy, you have to wait 5 minutes before you could eat the meat, right? Because for them, 5 minutes is eternity. My kids don't know time, right? So they go ahead and so they wait 5 minutes. When my kid turns 7, I say, okay, now it's not just 5 minutes. Now you have to wait an hour or half an hour between dairy and meat, right? Because it's a fence. And they're a child, they don't know, right? And so you kind of, and this is the way that we go ahead and then we go ahead and we break it down, right? That each piece along the way, right? Until finally get to the point when Chaim Zev is now 10. I think he's waiting 6 hours. Or just recently became waiting 6 hours. Right now he's old enough, he understands the concept, right? Right, it's all age appropriate, and now he understands to wait between 6 hours between meat and milk. Right, but that's because you know what's the law, is what the fence is, and therefore you go ahead and you want to train them into increments of things that they go ahead and that they can, right? A baby, right, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old doesn't understand the difference, right, to wait or whatever. So right, but again, right, so it's the fence. But then you go ahead and you say, okay, you have the fence, and now you go ahead and now you have the law. And so you just have to know. So making the fence was proper, The problem is that you have to know what the fence is and what the law is, and don't get the two mixed up. And that was the problem here, right? They were treating the fence and the law as being the same deal when it was not. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. So now the serpent said that perhaps God say you should not eat of any tree of the. And by the way, it's very fascinating. What does the serpent say? What does the serpent say to the woman? Did perhaps God say you should not eat of any tree of the garden? What name does he use for God? No. No. He uses God. He uses the name of justice. Okay, because what is the snake saying to the woman?
Perhaps justice say, you shall not eat.
God is being harsh on you, and He's not letting you eat from right. He's restricting you, right, my friends? How many of us think that God restricts us? Right, when God says the don't do's, who here feels constricted? Raise your hand. No, Kenny, you just love it. Right. It's fascinating, right? Because do we think God sits up there trying to figure out how to make us the most pained? Like how could I inconvenience Bentzi the most?
Take away barbecue.
Should come to my house. We had barbecue tonight for dinner, and cheeseburgers. Okay, all right. It's so funny. You know, somebody. You should know. Growing up as a kid, so I used to watch a lot of football games on Sunday. In my days, there was no Thursday night football. There was, there was Sunday, 2 games, one at 1, one at 4, on the East Coast, and they had these commercials for the Burger King or for McDonald's. I don't know, right? The ones with the flame broiled, burgers coming off. It looked really good, but guess what? I couldn't eat it. Right, and that's right. Like that's right. Like that's what it was about. Right, me going ahead and not being able to eat it. That's fine. Right, but that was right. That was seeing the flame broiled. And somebody once said to me, says, Rabbi, he says, I know you never ate non-kosher. I said, how do you know? He says, because whenever you use your example of like eating ribs, he says you like Spring Creek barbecue. He says, really, Rabbi, it's not that good. So I said, okay. So I said, so which one should I use? He says, Smoky, a Porky's, right in Memphis. He says, this is great restaurant chain. He said, those are the best smoked ribs. And then called Porky's, actually owned by a Jewish family. Right, but he says that's when you got to use. That's the best. That's the best barbecue.
There's a pork or the porky.
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh,
It's a great their mascot. It's like a pig with an apron on. But what? Yeah. So it's anyway. I use Spring Creek because it's in my backyard. When I walk out at night on it you walk out, you can smell it from my house. And the wind blowing the right way. It smells so good. And then you know what I say? It smells so good. And I really want to eat it. But guess what? God said no. So guess what?
You don't eat it.
I'm not going to eat it. Right? And I get all that reward for that. When I get upstairs in heaven, in line waiting to get into heaven, you know what they're going to have? They're going to have an all-you-can-eat barbecue place. As we stand in line, you're just going to eat as much as you want. Just all that smoked barbecue along the way. It's going to be really just amazing. Okay, so this thing says, did perhaps God saying, you should not eat any of the tree of the garden? So again, and what happens? So again, at that point in time, what should she have told the snake? Get lost. Right? I don't talk to strangers. Verse number 2, go ahead.
The woman said to the serpent, of the fruit of any tree of the garden we may eat. Of the fruit of the tree which is in the center of the garden, God has said, you shall neither eat of it nor touch it, lest you die.
Okay, right? Okay, so she says over, right? What does she say? Right, you should neither eat from it nor touch it, lest you die. Okay, verse number 4.
The serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and bad.
Okay. The serpent says to the woman, you will not surely die. For God knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open, you'll be like God, knowing good and bad. So what does the serpent say to the woman?
Super convinced. But to convince the woman that that God doesn't want them to know the truth. Really, when God knows that when they eat the fruit, they will not. They will know the truth, but God doesn't want them to know the truth.
Okay, right? Because why? Because what?
Because
Because what's the pitch that the snake says to the woman?
If you eat it, you'll be like God.
If you eat it, this is the God tree. Right? This is the God tree. If you eat from this tree, you will become God. The serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. Can I ask you a question? If God says if you touch it, you're going to die, and some slinky little snake comes to me and says, no, you won't die, who am I going to believe?
Not the snake.
Not the snake. So why is the woman, right? Why is she listening to the serpent? It's like they're listening to the serpent. It's crazy. Right? Why is she listening to the serpent at all?
Is Adam being neglectful? He's out fishing.
She's already made the first mistake by listening.
The first mistake was talking to the snake. Right? Listening, right? Really listening. Talking to the snake. Second mistake was talking. But why does the snake have any? The snake said, no, you won't die. God said you will die. How could the snake says you won't die? And she believes him. And she's a smart lady. Says the Talmud. The snake went ahead and the snake pushed woman into the tree. What happened was the snake got up into her face and said, you want this? You want to eat from this? Right? And it goes and she starts backing away. And he backs her up right into the tree.
So she's already touched it.
So she's touched it.
So
You know?
it's
He
not-
body checks her into the
So
tree.
it's not a far cry to go from touching it.
No, she said, if I touch it, I'm going to die.
And she doesn't.
And she doesn't die. And so what does he say? I told you.
So.
I told you so. So he said, well, why wouldn't God want me to eat from it? So what does the snake say?
Because you will be like
Because you'll become God. And God doesn't like competition. So he's caught her attention. You got it? Right? Verse 4 says, the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. Right? Because look, you touched the tree and you didn't die. It's not a problem. And why doesn't God want you to touch it? For God knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. You will be like God, knowing good and bad. So you're going to be the boss, knowing good and bad. Now let me ask you a question. You'll be like God, knowing good and bad. Right? You know good and bad. Because remember, good and bad is arbitrary. right? Good and bad is an arbitrary, who's good and who's bad.
How you
You
perceive it.
decide.
Depends on whatever how society says. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Mhm.
So who decides whether something is good or bad?
God.
Each individual does based on his perception of it.
And very fascinating. So is good and bad really the right way to look at things?
No,
Yeah.
truth and false.
Because the terrorists pray God, so help me
And
to.
then remember, so right, what's the right way to look at the world?
Truth and false.
Truth and falsehood. Is something true or something not true? But meanwhile, the snake says to her, right, you're going to become like God and you're going to know good and bad. Okay. Verse number 6. Taylor, you want to read?
Oh, me? Sorry. And the woman perceived that the tree was good for eating, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a means to wisdom, and she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate.
Okay. Whoa, slow down. So the woman looks at the tree, perceived that the tree was good for eating, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a means to wisdom. She now bought the snake's argument, hook, line, and sinker. And she took of its fruit, and she ate. Right? She goes ahead, and she's all in. And then what's the end of the verse?
And then she gave also to her husband, and he ate.
Okay. She gave also to her husband, and he ate? Is that what it says?
No, also to her husband with her, and he ate.
What does it mean with her? If her husband wasn't with her, how could she give it to him to eat?
Aren't they one? Even though they're two, aren't they one?
Okay. The two beings, of course he's with her. Otherwise, how could she give it to him to eat?
And they took like that.
Okay, folks. There are 3 sins that woman has done. And these 3 sins on these last 2 verses that we just read. And these are the 3 roots of evil that exist in the world till today. And any evil in the world till today is rooted in 1, 2, or 3 of these roots. Okay? So, what we said, okay, what are the 3 roots of evil that existed over here?
Jealousy.
Deceit,
You want to be like God. I can't remember.
deceit, and temptation.
Deceit. Okay, let's ask the question like this. Let's start off. Number 1. How does a snake get woman interested in eating from the tree?
Makes it sound like it's delicious and tempting, but.
Let me ask you a question. Were the other trees not delicious and tempting?
Yeah.
Yes. So what could she get from this tree that she couldn't get from all the other trees?
Because she will be like God.
Uh-huh. Because you get to be like God.
Right.
So what is sin number 1?
Be like God.
Is that we want
The
to
power.
be God. This is the God tree. You eat from this, what happens to you? You become God. That's called the God syndrome. Okay? We like making the rules. We don't like following the rules. Who here likes making the rules? Who here likes following the rules?
Most of them.
As I most of them, Rabbi. Right? I'm happy with not eating a cheeseburger as long as there's no cheeseburger in front of me. If there's a cheeseburger in front of me, I'm not happy following the rules. So what does the snake say? You will become God. And woman says, sign me up. Sin number 1, we want to be God. And it's fascinating because what is our job? To become God-like, right? To emulate God. But to understand that ultimately God is God and we're not.
Yeah, you said God-like.
Right, God-like, right? We're supposed to emulate God. Right? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to emulate God, but not supposed to be God. So the first sin that exists till today is we want to be God. Sin number 2 is what? Why does she eat from the tree?
Temptation. She's coveting what it has to offer.
She desires the fruit. What's sin number 2? Desire. Streetcar named Desire. Desire is sin number 2. Sin number 1 is we want to be God. Sin number 2 is we desire. Now, is desire good or bad? Depends what we desire. You desire your own spouse? That's a good thing. You desire somebody else's spouse? Not so good. Right? So again, sin number 1 is you want to be God. Sin number 2 is desire. She eats from the tree. What happens after she eats from the tree?
She didn't die.
She gives it to her husband.
Hmm?
She gives it to
her husband. Why does she give it to her husband?
She doesn't want to be the only one
Spread the
sinning.
sin.
She what? She
Doesn't want to be the only one sinning.
Spread the wealth.
Spread the wealth. Share it. Share and share alike. Why does she give it to her husband?
Because she didn't die. She said like...
She didn't die? She absolutely did. She took that bite into the apple. Not the apple, remember, right? Into the fruit, right? She goes ahead, she takes a bite into the challah. And as soon as she takes a bite into the challah and swallows it, what happens to her?
She's no longer spiritual.
She's no longer living forever. And as soon as she eats from that tree, she realizes that she is going to die. Her life meter begins waning
Begins to tick.
and begins to tick. And all of a sudden she realizes she's not plugged in anymore. She's on battery power. When the battery power dies, so does she. And what happens?
If I'm going to do it, you're going to do it.
If I'm going down, baby, you're coming with me. Why?
Didn't want to be alone.
She won't be alone. She'll be dead.
But she didn't want him to marry
She's
someone
guilty
else.
about it.
Hold on. You see, you gotta give a woman answering this question. What's the answer?
She didn't want him to marry
She didn't want somebody. She said, if I'm gonna die,
You ain't getting
what does that mean? He's gonna get to marry another chick. And guess what? Ain't happening. So what does she do?
You're dying with me.
You're dying with me, honey. Honey, come, I got some delicious hot challah for you. How do we know this?
Because you taught it last year.
But how do we know? Where does it say it in the verse?
her husband with her and he ate.
She gave also to her husband with her. What does it mean with her? She gave it to her husband to be with her. Why does she want him with her? Because she doesn't want him marrying anybody else. So the three crimes of humanity, the three sins that are still around today. The three sins are, number one, to be God. Number two, desire. Number three, jealousy. Right? These are the three sins. And these are the three sins that till today, every sin is rooted in one, two, or three of these sins. Okay? If you look back on your life and you realize every time that you have sinned, right, you will look back and you will see it comes from either one, two, or three of these ideas. Either A, we want to be the boss. Two, we're just really too good to pass up. And three, we're jealous. By the way, why did God create jealousy?
To be jealous of studying Torah.
Ooh, very good. Right? What's the proper way to use to use jealousy? To be jealous of somebody who knows more Torah than you. That hopefully will inspire us to learn more Torah. Right? So if you're jealous of somebody because they know more Torah than you, then that's a good use of jealousy. If you do use jealousy for any other reason, that's a bad use of jealousy. Right? So these three sins, these are the three sins that are every sin till today is absorbed in these sins, and it's either one, two, or three of these ideas. Anytime a person sins, they go ahead and it comes from one, two, or three of these ideas. And it's all here included in chapter 3, the first 6 verses of chapter 3. Okay. Now, so why did woman eat from the tree?
To be like God.
To be like God, desire, and jealousy. Now, why did man eat from the tree?
He listened to the wife.
What?
He listened to his wife. The wife gave it to him.
But God said, don't do it.
Yeah, but Eve convinced him because she didn't want him to have, if she died, she didn't want him to find somebody else.
Good. I understand why she wanted to eat from it.
Oh, okay, but I guess.
But why did he want to eat from it? Did he know this was from the tree of knowledge of good and bad?
Yeah.
Yes. How do we know that was, he knew that?
Well, because God had already showed it to him, so he knew what it looked like.
Right. And if he didn't know that that was from the tree, he wouldn't have been punished. So why did man eat from it?
Because he didn't want his wife to die alone.
He didn't want his wife? So he should die with her? Wouldn't it be nice for him to stick around to be able to take care of it? Take care of her?
Well, it has to be one of the three, right? It has to be desire or jealousy to be like God, right? So if it's not jealousy, right, and it's not being like God, it must be desire. Like it has to be one of the three.
No.
Because that was why that's all the.
That's the reason why people would sin.
That's the only reason why that was why they got kicked out.
Right. So again, good. Okay. So what was the reason that he ate from it?
It has to be one of the three, right?
So which one?
Desire.
That what?
To be I'm just gonna say that one, and then something happened.
I'll fill in the blank. I'll explain to everybody what you meant to say.
But B.
Right? Great question. Why is he eating from it?
Jealousy that he wants to know what she knows now.
Yeah.
And he wants to know how she managed to die.
But,
Next question. Did he know that she was dying?
yeah.
Yes. That the glow had dimmed.
Did he know what?
Yep.
He didn't want to be alone, so he wanted to die.
He's gonna marry next chick.
He figured this was the woman that God gave him, so hey, you know.
If she's going down, he's going down with her.
She gave it to me.
How chivalrous.
You gave it to you gave her to me.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. Bad move. Loyalty is that he gave her to you, so now you got to pick her up and save her from drowning. Why does Adam eat from the tree?
Guilt? Taking
What?
part of the blame?
Says the Talmud. An amazing idea. Adam ate from the tree because Adam said, God, there's no way I'm going to sin. And why is there no way I'm going to sin? Because you think some stupid snake is going to convince me to eat from the tree that you told me not to eat from it. Ain't happening. He says, the challenge is that, but this way I don't sanctify your name. I am going to eat from the tree, and after I eat from the tree, I am then going to go ahead and not listen I'm going to, because what took place? What took place when they ate from the tree?
The evil inclination.
The what?
They got the evil inclination.
Really? Didn't they have the snake before they ate?
Well, no, but he was like a snake. But now it's like they have the knowledge of how to use the snake. And
But they knew they had the knowledge before that, so they could sin.
I got nothing.
Right? You following? Right? What switch took place?
Somehow he was going to convince God that, I don't know, something about.
That he could fight the temptation.
And the answer is like this. The switch that took place was that before they ate from the tree, the evil inclination was outside their body, and they associated themselves with their good inclination. After they ate from the tree of knowledge, it flipped, and they associated themselves with their evil inclination, and the good inclination now was outside their body.
Like a default? The default would be evil.
Or an example like this. Right? I want to eat that cheeseburger. Who wants to eat the cheeseburger? The body. So who do I associate myself with? My body. Before they ate from the tree, what happened? Their body said, ugh, disgusting, a cheeseburger. And little Jiminy Cricket, dancing on the shoulder, said, smell how delicious it is. It's yummy. Right? As soon as they ate from it, they swapped that around. And they became associated with their body, not with their soul.
Why didn't Adam have the strength before to say no?
He does. He actually says it's not even a competition. Nothing to do. I'm not going to eat from that tree.
Even after she ate from it?
Yeah, oh yeah. Not a big deal. Right? Because he associated himself with his soul, and it's disgusting. You think some little slimy snakes running around is going to convince him to do something that God doesn't want him to do?
I still don't get it.
So Adam said as follows. Adam says, if I eat from the tree and I internalize the evil inclination, and now I associate myself with my body rather than with my soul, I then go ahead and I associate myself now, right, that I want that cheeseburger. And then now the little angel dancing on my shoulder says, don't eat it. God says, no, please don't eat it. Stop, right? Adam says, no problem. I'm going to listen to what God says, and I won't eat from it. He says, so I'm going to eat it, internalize the evil inclination, and then I'll listen to God, and that'll be much greater sanctification of God's name. Because now I'll have an even stronger temptation, and I'll still listen to God, and therefore I'll sanctify God's name even greater. And that's what Adam goes ahead and Adam says. What was wrong with that?
Doesn't work.
Doesn't
Doesn't work that way.
work that way. What's wrong with it?
You're testing God?
No. God said, don't eat it. Which words of don't eat did you not understand? Right? You made up your own reason for doing what you want to do. Right? You made up your own reason. But who says that that's... God says don't eat it. That's all you need to know. All you need to know is know what God said. God said no. But Adam ate it for a totally different reason. He said, I'm going to sanctify God's name even more. And he fails.
Are we supposed to understand that?
That what?
That what you just said.
Okay, let me say it again. Okay. Adam said, God said not to eat it, right? But what was the part that was pulling him to eat? A snake, an outside influence. So Adam says, if I don't listen to that outside influence, that's not really sanctifying God's name. Because of course I'm not going to listen to it. He says, I'm going to make my test harder.
Oh.
Okay, I'm going to, right, it's such an easy test. It's an easy test. I'm going to make a test even harder. I'm going to internalize the evil inclination. And then when I internalize the evil inclination, then I'm going to listen to what God says. And then I will really be sanctifying God's name. Right? He did it to do a mitzvah. Right? He did it to make a greater sanctification of God's name. That's why he did it. What's the mistake?
God knows best.
God said no. Right? Don't think you're smarter than God. Right? So you want to know which one it is? You think you're smarter than God.
So you be like God. Yeah,
Right. To be like God. There's a few different pieces in right. To be like God. Right.
Well, what about like that's an ulterior of like, what about, you know, when you do things in life and you're like, okay, I'm going to do that and I'm going to get this goodie package, but it's going to also work out for God too, because if when I do that, then I get other, then he gets that, glorifying.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things that you do in your head.
Right, we do in your
like,
head, absolutely.
Yeah,
This is
instead of getting a treat out of it, he's getting the knowledge.
The-
But then on top of it, like, oh, don't worry, God, because this is going to be better.
Right. I'll be able to give more charity. I'll rob the bank, but that way I'll be able to give more charity.
Yeah, 10%
Right.
of the million. Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
Right? That's our job. You got it?
So he thought that if he ate the cheeseburger and then never ate of it again, that was bigger than never eating the cheeseburger.
Right.
Because
And in
now
fact-
he's had the taste
And
of
in
it.
fact, I'll tell you something amazing. You know what the Talmud says? The place where Baal Tshuva stands, right? The place where somebody who has sinned and has come back to God, where he stands, is higher than anyone else at all. Even a totally righteous person who has never sinned doesn't reach his level. Because somebody who has sinned and then has come back to God, he's an even greater level.
Well, doesn't that in a way prove what Adam was saying?
So no. So Adam is the poster child for that. No. So that was Adam's original thought, but then the reason is because God said no.
So I should have done drugs when I was a kid.
So it's very interesting. So I once had a guy come over. Or you should have inhaled, right? Because I could smoke, I didn't inhale, right? So what? Well, now I guess you could smoke and inhale. Well, whatever. Okay, go figure. Okay, so no, it's so good. It's so good. You know why? Because like we live in this little rat race, so people are just they're just checking out. So it's really great. You know, there'll be less mice running around, right? So it's just right. So it's an amazing thing, right? So it's just an amazing thing, right? You go ahead and you're able to, right? Adam says, "I'm going to eat. I'm going to become smarter." And then I'm not gonna. So I had a guy come over to me. He says, "Rabbi, so I'm gonna sin on purpose. Like, and then I'll do tshuva. And I'm gonna go ahead that cheeseburger, and I'll come back and I'll do tshuva." He said, "Because then I'll be greater than the other person." I said, "How did that work out for Adam?" Right? My Talmud says he can't do that. Right? But that's the idea. So Adam, but she eats it because she was jealous. So she ate it for the three reasons: she wanted to be God, desire, and jealousy. Right? Those are the roots of all all sins in the world today. Boil down to one, two, or three of these ideas. Right? Either we want to be God, we don't want to follow the rules, we want to make the rules. Desire and jealousy. Okay, so let's see what happens. Verse number 7. Okay. Kenny, you want to read?
Sure. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked, and they sewed together a fig leaf and made themselves aprons.
No. Okay, so what happens here?
All of a sudden, they have recognized their bodies.
What does it mean to recognize their bodies?
Well, I mean, they were basically spiritual and not really physical as much. And now they look at themselves and they say, "Wait a minute, this is
Something has changed.
yeah."
It's very good, right? Remember we said before this, they were walking around, they were just basically lights with some sort of kind of like physical shell that kind of just held the light in place. Yeah, but now, as soon as they ate, what happened? Their bodies became human, right? They became flesh, right? All of a sudden, right? You didn't see a shining hand, you saw a hand.
But how could that be naked if they never saw flesh before? If you think
No,
about
so that's what it
right?
means. It means,
how could something that
it
never
means
existed
naked
before
means without spirituality.
Okay.
Right? Because now the
Okay,
spirituality had
okay.
become covered.
Okay.
Right? Okay, right? The both, and they saw they were naked, and they made sewed together fig leaf, and they made for themselves belts. Why did they cover themselves with fig leaves?
Because they didn't see their parts as being for the use of godliness anymore, but for the use of physical desire.
It doesn't say what they covered.
Wait, what did you say?
It doesn't say what they covered.
Oh, well, aprons usually go from here to here.
Yeah.
I assumed all the perfect part.
Right.
But the first
It's
time-
interesting. Adam just needed a little chef's apron, the one. Why are they going ahead and what are they covering themselves?
They became naked
And so what, they became naked?
because the spiritual their spirituality is gone, and then they recognize their human condition now.
And therefore they recognize your condition, and therefore what?
So they're going to say when either you're going to die. So they really, the body died at that time.
Go ahead.
I'm picking up remnants of 2 weeks ago, and that's where I stopped.
They looked at themselves and they were tremendously ashamed. Why were they ashamed?
Because they're naked.
No,
No!
because they screwed up the whole thing.
Okay, and what happened? Why are they ashamed? Where did their light go? Where did their light go? The light got covered up underneath the hand.
Oh, they light went through.
Oh, it's covered. Oh, so they weren't so much naked per se. They were clothed.
What happened was their light became covered up with a body, so they were tremendously ashamed. Help! Where did my light go? So what are they covering up? Their physicality. Because oh my gosh, now, if you see my physicality, what does that mean? It means I messed up the spirituality that I had.
They look ugly, something.
It's not a question of looking ugly, right? They're the most beautiful women, the most beautiful people to ever walk the planet.
Scarlet letter walking around with.
But
that's what I screwed up.
but no, that's Cain and Abel, right? But
I'm just saying in general, they screwed up. That's why they have the body.
that's why we have the body. That's why there's a physical body. You see the physical body. The physical body is embarrassing to me,
Okay.
right? Because you don't see me glow.
So even though that Adam saw the woman that way, he ate anyway.
Isn't that amazing? He saw her die. How could he eat from it? Right? And so what's the answer? He ate from it in a way to sanctify God's name. Right? That's why he ate from it. To sanctify God's name. To do something to sanctify God's name with. He had good intentions. But as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Like an altruistic bank robber.
Yeah. Robin Hood.
Yeah.
What's fascinating? So, what tree was the tree that they ate from? Tree of knowledge, right? What was the tree of knowledge? Right, and what type of tree was it?
A bread tree.
Right, so there are 4 opinions in the Talmud. One opinion was
Almond.
a what?
Almond tree.
No. Nobody says almond and nobody says apple. So take those 2 off. You're okay. Strike them from the list.
A fig,
A fig, a grape,
the bread,
the bread.
and a wheat.
Yeah, that bread is wheat.
Wait, I know, but maybe
Yeah, no. 3 out of 4 ain't bad.
75%.
That's it. Or the esrog. That's right, what we use in sukkahs. So the one who says a fig, how do they say fig? Because they covered themselves with fig leaves from this verse. So we see that there was fig leaves around, so therefore the tree they must have eaten from was a fig tree. And the one who says grapes, why does he say grapes? Because when you drink wine, you get a little meshugana. Stay away from wine, my friends. Cause you lots of problems. Next Thursday you can drink. It's Purim.
Next Thursday.
Purim.
Oh. What are we doing?
No, a lot of drinking. I don't remember. Right, so that's why grapes. So grape tree makes sense. Fig tree, get it. Bread tree. How do we know a bread tree?
Olive, because they were supposed to wait for the Sabbath to eat of it, and we wait for the Sabbath to eat.
So how do we know a bread tree?
It was a tree of life, and Hollow is Torah. Torah is the life.
Because when they get cursed, it says now with the sweat of your brow you're going to eat bread, which means before they sinned, did they have the sweat of the brow to eat bread? No. It just grew. It's a bread tree.
Isn't that why the woman makes the challah and gives it to the man to make up for?
Yeah, and that's actually right. That's why in Shabbat a woman makes the challah and that gives it to her husband because she's doing a tikkun. She's fixing up the sin of Eve, of woman that woman did to man, because woman gave to man from the tree and killed him. So now on Shabbat she brings him challah and now gives him life. Right? You get it? Okay. Very interesting. So, gives them from the tree, makes them belts, and all of a sudden life is good.
Why the esrog?
Why the esrog? It's a 4th opinion, because it's called an eitz hadar, a beautiful fruit. Right, but we don't. That's a singular opinion. The majority opinion is that it's a bread tree. And that's what the halacha is, that's what Jewish law says, it was the bread tree. Because remember, the Talmud will never discuss something that is meaningless, that doesn't have a clear manifestation that we need to know in the future. Why do we need to know what type of tree it was that they ate? I'm going to teach you a fascinating law. Fascinating law. When you want to eat something, what do you have to do before you eat something?
Right,
Make a blessing. Let's say there's a baby around there that has made a dirty diaper. Are you allowed to make the blessing?
Yes, it depends on what it's made. If it's a baby and it doesn't smell,
Oh,
you can do it.
the answer depends if the diaper smells. If the diaper smells, you can't make a blessing. If the diaper doesn't smell, you can make a blessing. When does a baby's diaper begin to smell? When they eat bread. Why? Because you know what that smell is?
Death.
That's death. That's decay. And death comes to the world from the challah tree. And that's why wheat, right? When you eat the wheat product, that's when the baby's diaper begins to smell. Okay? So it goes ahead. And they open up their eyes. They know they're naked because now all of a sudden they're physical, right? There's a physicality. Their light has been hidden, right? And also, by the way, just FYI, before man ate from the tree, what was covering his body?
Light.
Oh, like
Light.
a fingernail.
But it was like a fingernail covering.
But what was it? Was it covering?
His entire body was like sheathed in a
Okay.
in a right, because fingernails is skin, right? So the whole body was covered in skin,
Okay.
right? Like a fingernail, like a harder substance. And when they sinned and they ate, their fingernails left their entire body and only left on their hands and feet. Which is why, this is interesting, what law is attached to that idea? When you cut your nails, right?
You can't do them in order.
We should do them in order. Why aren't you supposed to do them in order?
Because that's the order that the mortician will cut them when you die.
Right. When we prepare a body, right, that is going to be buried, right, we cut their nails in order. So we go ahead and we rotate, right, 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, whatever it is, right? And what do you have to do with the fingernail once you cut it? Depends how righteous you are. If you're super righteous, you burn it. If you're not so righteous, you just bury it. And the Talmud actually says that a pregnant woman that steps on nail cuttings, right, is liable to have a miscarriage.
Isn't that kind of superstitious, Henry?
If it wouldn't be true, it would be superstitious. So, right, that's why you have to be careful when you cut your nails to make sure to, right, either flush them down the toilet, right? Don't let them just scatter anywhere, right? Just right, burn them. It's interesting. I once had a student in class. She said, "Yeah, my grandmother was a religious woman. She was crazy." So I said, "Really?" I said, "Why was your grandmother crazy? Like, how do you know? What did she do that you knew she was crazy?" So she said, "Well, whenever she cut her nails, she always made sure to burn them." And I said, "Isn't it funny? What the Talmud says is a super righteous woman you call crazy." I said, "Who's the crazy one in the room?" Now, but that's because the whole bodies were covered in the fingernail. When they sinned, they came off their body, but it was left on their only on our fingernails, right? On our toenails and fingernails. Right? Which is why when you wake up in the morning, what are you supposed to do? Wash your hands. Right? Why do we wash our hands?
Wash off the last bit.
Right, because what happens when our soul leaves our body when we go to sleep? So as soon as the soul leaves the body, what happens?
It's basically dead.
So spiritual impurity comes rushing into our body. Okay? And then when our soul comes back in the morning, what happens to spiritual impurity? It gets pushed out. And a little bit is left over in our fingernails. So says the Talmud, make sure you go and you wash. Right? A ritual washing, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? You wash your hands, right? 6 times. Some people do 7 and 8. Right? To remove that last...
7 and 8?
Because that removes, and if the water became spiritually impure,
Uh-huh.
the 7th and 8th one washes off the water.
Oh, okay.
What's the blessing you say, or you just do
The same blessing that you make
Blessing.
before you eat the bread. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu ha'netilas yadayim. Right? Right? They commanded us, right, to demand us to wash our hands. And that's what takes place. I'm glad we wash our hands, right, in the morning.
Did you say the same blessing we do for the bread?
We do when we wash. It's the same blessing we do when we wash before you eat bread. You wash your hands.
Oh,
The same
okay.
blessing you make that.
It's the same.
It's the same blessing that you do.
Until like your day.
I didn't tell you that, man. That's the same blessing you make in the morning. Okay. Good. Verse number 8. Okay.
They heard the sound of Hashem God manifesting itself in the garden towards evening, and the man and his wife hid from Hashem God among the trees of the garden. Hashem God called.
Hold on. So what happens as soon as they eat? What happens?
They're afraid of God.
There.
No. What happens?
They hear the
God
sound.
comes down.
God comes down. And what does God do?
He tiptoes to give him a chance.
No. Not tiptoe.
He lets them know that he's.
Right, to hear God.
So what did you say?
And by the way, which God is this?
Mercy.
Mercy. Isn't it crazy? They just sinned. They didn't listen to God. In the Garden of Eden, right? And which God shows up?
Mercy.
Isn't that amazing? Right? The God of mercy shows up. And what does he do? What does God say?
He gives him a chance to do tshuva. Before
He goes,
he
remember what does he do? He's coughing, saying, is anyone home? Anyone hear me? Right? Hello, guys. Ooh, ooh, hello. Ooh, hello. Oh, it's so amazing. And what do people do?
They did not do tshuva.
Oh my gosh. No. That's not what they didn't do. What did they do?
They hid as if they could hide from God. Another chance.
Oh my gosh. Dive! Hide! God's coming! You know what it reminds me of? You know, you're looking for your 3-year-old, playing hide and go seek, and they go and they put themselves under the blanket and have their feet hanging out, and they think you can't see them because they can't see you. Right? And by the way, we're talking about reasonably intelligent adults here. When I talk about Adam and woman, right? You're talking about the very, very incredibly giant, amazing people. And what are they doing? They're hiding from God. My friends, have you ever heard of a more ridiculous statement than this? Every time I read this verse, I just sit here and I just wonder. I just don't get it. You think you can hide from God?
No.
Is this not the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard?
Mm-hmm.
Is this not just bizarre? It's not just bizarre.
So much for the knowledge tree.
I find this just amazing. You're trying to hide from God.
I thought Adam was trying to do a mitzvah. Why is he hiding for?
Oh?
Anyway.
So let me ask you a question. Why did Adam and woman get thrown out of the garden?
Because they lost their spirituality.
This is 3 sins, right? Jealousy.
the garden is spiritual perfection, and they are no longer.
Scott, help him out. Why does man get thrown out of the garden?
I'm wondering myself.
Kenny? Nothing. Drawing a blank?
As usual.
Come on, Kenny. Stop being so modest. So everyone always tells me because they ate from the tree. They did 3 sins. That's why they get thrown out. That is categorically incorrect. And I'll prove it to you. They get thrown out in verse 23. When do they eat from the tree? Yeah, go ahead, Kenny. Turn to page 23. Just make sure that I'm telling the truth. Yeah, no. Right. How it read. Go ahead. How does it read in verse 23?
So Hashem God banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the soil from which he was taken.
Okay, right. That's what gets thrown out. When does he eat from the tree? Verse 6. A lot of things that happen between verse 6 and verse 23.
Oh, so it's not right away.
Aha! Well, if you tell me they got thrown out because they ate from the tree, they should be thrown out. Verse number 7, God should mosey on in, throw the flag, kick them out, and just be done with it. But that's not what happens. It's not what happens. Why does man get thrown out of the garden?
They didn't ask for forgiveness.
Ooh! Boris!
No.
With the grand slam.
Yeah.
Boris, repeat that again.
Yeah.
They didn't ask for forgiveness.
They didn't ask for forgiveness. What would have happened if Adam and woman would have said to God, oh my gosh, we're so sorry, God, please forgive us. What a stupid thing we did, we're so sorry, please, please, please forgive us.
They would have let him stay.
They would have stayed, and they would have stayed, they would have recovered their glow.
Right.
So everything would have been reconciled.
Everything would have been reconciled.
I didn't know that.
And why do they get thrown out of the garden?
Because you're hiding.
Because they were hiding from God. And instead of just owning up and saying, I'm sorry, God, I sinned. And how many chances did God give them?
6, wasn't it?
They're like eight sentences or something.
Of God just going around one by one by one by one. Right verse number. So one thing is their eyes were open and they realized they were naked. Right? So what should they have said? We're sorry, God, please forgive us. That's not enough. What happens in verse number 8? God comes and shows up in the garden. And what do they do instead of say sorry? They start hiding. Number 2. Okay? And then verse number 9. God calls man and says, what's going on? Again and again and again and again, God comes and God says,
They should come out clean and
come
say,
clean.
We are guilty, forgive us.
So,
Forgive us.
forgive us, God.
Yeah.
We're sorry. But the 2 hardest words in the English language,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And all man had to do was say, I'm sorry. And what does man do?
Evade it.
Evaded it.
Everything,
Hide
just
it.
Hide it.
Go and running away from it.
Deny it. Put the
Deny
wicked
it.
out.
Do everything in their power just not to say, I'm sorry. You understand?
Did they because they didn't understand the importance of admitting their guilt, or because they were simply so afraid of him? That they were afraid that it wouldn't help.
Ah.
Were they so afraid that they were afraid that it
They're afraid you say you're sorry and you move on with life.
So they were so afraid, they were afraid even to say sorry. Would it be that they were so afraid and scared of God that they just didn't think that He would accept their forgiveness, maybe. That's what their mistake was.
Right. Well, no. You see, it's not even that. Can you hide from God?
No.
What happens if you think you can hide from God? What? Come looking for you.
Yeah, He will get your attention if you think that.
Yeah, they missed the opportunity.
How can you run away from God?
You can.
I just find it totally stupendous, mind-blowing. I just don't get it.
So how could they do it?
But could I tell you something, Boris?
Yeah.
We read this story and we think it's such a funny story.
It's a tragic story.
It's a tragic story. But can I tell you something even more tragic? We do the exact same thing.
We do.
We do. I mean, I would cry, but right, if it wasn't so sad, I would cry. How many of us try to run away from God? How many of us try to kind of like, maybe God won't see me? I mean, everyone just think, okay, we'll just ignore God. Right? We'll make our own rules.
So
And then God shows up. And you know what He says? I'll crash the market. Right? You have a, right? You got this happen, or that happened, or this happened, or that happened. And what do? No, what a coincidence.
So everything could have been fixed if you could just ask for forgiveness. That's basic premise.
That's all.
Ask for forgiveness.
All you need to do is say,
admit I was there.
I'm sorry. I made a mistake.
So two intelligent
people, two not intelligent people, these Adam and Eve, these two giants.
How could they not understand? How could they not do that? This is the fascinating.
Right. So what's the answer? Why didn't they do it?
Why didn't they do it?
Why did they do it, boy?
Consider how bright and brilliant they are.
Correct.
So
how could they not do it?
There is an answer for it?
Of course there is.
Enthralled in their shame.
Why?
That they just didn't think there was any coming back from it?
No.
Why didn't they do it?
So maybe they didn't recognize they have sin?
Because we are blind by our evil inclination.
That's what held them back?
Evil inclination had him hook, line, and sinker. He bagged them. They were all gone. The whole thing was just out of it. They had no clue.
So after they ate forbidden fruit, the evil inclination took over.
The evil inclination took over, and it was like tossed the bag over their head, and they had no clue what was going on, and they just do things that are just ridiculous.
So by that time,
yeah,
when they should have asked for forgiveness, consider how brilliant they both were, right? Yeah. Since they ate from the tree, and after that immediately they got evil inclination filled them
inside, right?
Inside, then their intelligence and brilliance diminished. That's why they.
I'm going to tell you something fascinating.
That's why they couldn't come.
We know what we know. We know what we don't know. But we don't know what we don't know. Meaning, right? We say, okay, good, I'm an expert in this. I don't know this area. There's another area of thing where we're so blind, we can't even see. Right? We can't even see where we're deficient.
Yeah.
We can't even see where we're missing.
Right. He's showing us the
right. You're following, right? Meaning, right? I go say, Borders, do you know about higher mathematics? What would you tell me? No, you don't know that. I asked you, do you know about diamonds? What do you tell me? Yeah, you know about diamonds. I said, do you know there's a whole world of Torah? He said, what's Torah? Right. We don't even know what we don't know.
So how that connects with their action?
The action is they went ahead and they're denying. They first don't listen to God, right? Woman does it from right, the three sins. Man does it from a good place, from an altruistic place.
Well,
And then when it comes time to pull the trigger, he internalizes the evil inclination. All he has to say is, "I'm sorry, God." All he has to say.
both of them, not just
Both of them. And what happens?
But
They didn't.
They didn't.
Right.
And what do?
Yeah,
They run away
make
from it.
excuses.
They run away from it. Right? They run away from it and say, right, it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And that did it again because the evil inclination took over their mind. I mean, they couldn't think straight anymore. Can we say that?
No,
Such a
no, no, no.
They still were brilliant at
They
the
still
time,
were brilliant.
and they still didn't do it.
And the evil inclination just was such a good salesman that we
So
stopped.
they've won.
They
Evil inclination
lost.
won.
The evil inclination won. And we lost.
Yeah, but Rabbi, what the time they recognize that they become naked, and then the question should be what we have done, because they recognize now that we become naked.
Right.
What we done. So when God show up and say, "Where are you?" and then they just give excuses here like we usually do. You say, "I hear the sound of you and in the garden, and I was afraid because."
But did you perhaps eat from something I told you not to eat? Right, the whole thing.
Right.
But mankind goes and eats, and all mankind needs to do is to do what? Is to say, "I am sorry."
Right.
All they need to do is to say, "I am sorry."
When something wrong is done, it must be admitted and owe to it.
Right? And all they do is what? Just continue straight on saying what?
Denying.
Denying it.
Yeah.
First I can hide from, but even not only just denying that they did it, they go ahead and they start denying God.
And rationalize that.
Right? They think I can hide from God. They go and they dive underneath the bushes.
So when Adam
And say, God can't see me, I can hide from God.
But
I don't need to own what I did.
The mistakes of Adam was that he started interpreting something he is not supposed to
He
interpret.
starts going down this path of denying God.
And he said
And it's
that-
amazing. Because read verse number 9. Right? What does verse number 9 say? Isaac, read verse number 9.
Let's see, verse number 9. Hashem God calls out to the man and says to him, "Where are you?"
Ayeka. Where are you? You want to hear something amazing? How do you say "where are you" in Hebrew? Ayeka. Aleph, Yud, Chaf, Hey. Kenny, what are those letters spelled? Aleph, Yud, Chaf, Hey. You ever heard of the word Eicha? Otherwise known as the Book of Lamentations. You know how you say woe? Woe to me in Hebrew? Eicha. And God calls out to man. And God says, "Whoa. Look what you've done." My friends, when you don't know Ayeka, where you are, when you lose track of why we are here and what our job is in this world, you lead to tragedy. You know what the Book of Lamentations is all about? What? The Book of Lamentations is all about the destruction of the temple. It's all about, right, the Jewish people creating this chasm between them and God. Desolation. Ruin.
hatred.
Destruction.
Hatred.
And where does that come from? Ayeka, where are you? God says to man, don't you get it? Don't you understand?
Apparently not.
Right? Don't you understand what I'm trying to tell you? I told you don't eat from the tree. I told you, right, to stay away.
Without any interpretation, just don't do it.
Just don't do it. And what do?
They do it.
You eat from it. And then what do you do after you eat from it?
Deny it.
You deny it. And what do you do after you deny it?
You hide it.
You try to hide from me. You think I can't see you.
How
When
do
you don't know where you are
Right.
and where you are going and what this world is about, you left with tremendous tragedy.
That's why we have such a tragic world today, because of the sins and everything was derived from it
Right?
for thousands of years, and humanity still cannot come in grips with that.
And what do we need to do?
We made a boo-boo.
What?
We made a... God said, where are you guys? You say, oh, we made a boo-boo.
We made a boo-boo. And we're sorry. I'm going to tell you something. Man was created. God knows we're going to sin. God knows we're going to sin. We're humans.
Depends to
You know
what
which
extent.
creatures don't sin? Animals and angels. They do exactly what they're told to do. Human beings sin. We have free will. We don't get it right all the time. But I have a little secret for you. We don't need to get it right every time. Because we're humans and we will make mistakes. And that's okay. What do we have to remember?
To do the best we can.
We have to remember that when we mess up,
To
we
say,
say, I'm sorry.
Yes. That's the problem. Nobody does it.
Right? What do we teach our kids when they're 3 years old and they throw sand in the sandbox? Say, I'm sorry. And when we sin against God, what do we need to say?
Sorry.
When we sin against man, what do we have to say?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. And move on.
The inclination, evil inclination, man has since that days of the beginning. The evil inclination is so great and so horrible. Sometimes it can manifest itself in such a thing.
Right.
What human can do.
Right.
The good illustration is Holocaust. To what depth? To what
Human beings can
human
sink.
being can do? The horror they can do
Right?
to other humans. It's undescribable.
Right?
To what
And
depth-
and all our job is to own it. And say we're sorry. God's not asking a lot from us.
No, but it just shows how what a horrible thing humans can do. Consider I'm bringing Holocaust because it's a very vivid illustration to that. What they can do to other humans on such a scale, unseen in the world, and these human beings can do this evil, and that's how evil inclination, how strong it is
We're able to sink. Human beings are able to be
to sink,
to
exactly.
rise to tremendous heights
or
to sink to tremendous lows.
right.
And by God calls out and says, "Where are you?
Worse than animals.
Ayeka, where are you?" Because when you don't know where you are, and you don't know what your job is, and you don't know why you're here, then that ayeka of, oh my gosh, where are you, is going to turn into echa, woe, a lamentation. It's going to turn into a lament. And it's going to be tragedy that's going to come upon the world.
That's what exactly happened.
Right?
It can keep on
Right?
happening.
When we don't keep ourselves focused, we don't know what we're here, why we're here, what are we trying to accomplish, then at that point in time, right, we don't get to a place, right, of becoming godly.
Yeah.
Adam kind of presents it like as if he were the stronger of the two because Eve, fell for the serpent's lie, whereas he didn't. But isn't in the story Eve actually stronger than Adam as far as her resistance? Because it actually took an outside source for her to eat of it, whereas he just messed himself over.
Yeah, he just went along with it.
I mean, he didn't even have anyone trying to talk him into it.
Right, but he did it from a good place. She did it from a place of wanting to right.
Succumb to
But
desire.
again, but it's irrelevant because the Torah is teaching us it's relevant, male, female. We all have our weak points. and our job is to
Fight.
to fight it, wherever it is. No matter you're male, you're female, it makes no difference, right? Means we all have our evil inclination, and our job is to fight that evil inclination.
As far as the nakedness goes, and suddenly they realized they felt ashamed, and
Right.
they suddenly realized that they are naked. Is
Right.
before the sin. They
after
walked
sin.
around and they didn't feel ashamed.
Right.
So how, since when this intimacy between man and woman became
There's nothing to do with intimacy.
connected with the sin?
There's nothing to do with intimacy. They weren't embarrassed because they were naked, because now they're gonna have sex. That's not why they were embarrassed.
How the Torah looks at
They
sex
were-
in this
they-
respect?
they were
Was
in-
it a sin?
No.
Basically, the sex considered a sin.
No,
in
it's a
Torah?
mitzvah.
In Torah,
Sure.
because it's a lot of guilt attached to it.
You know, right? Because we live in the Christian. By the way, you know where that comes from?
Yeah.
Because the Christians say that the original sin was sex, because they mistranslate actually first the Torah. Right? Take a look at chapter 4, verse 1. Right after the story, they found their sin and they get kicked out of the garden. So in chapter 4, it says, "And man knew his wife, right? Eve, his wife, and she gave birth, and gave birth to Cain, gave birth to."
So in
Abel.
Torah, it's not just, I mean,
Hold on.
strictly procreation.
What does it say? What does it really say?
He had known his wife.
He had known his wife. Known is what tense?
Past
The past tense.
Right.
See, so the Christians say they only had sex after they got kicked out. It's only after they sinned did they have sex. But yet, that's a mistranslation, because what does it say in chapter 4, verse 1?
He had known his
He had known, when he had known her? Before they even sinned.
So Torah doesn't forbid sex, just
No,
for procreation.
No.
Just for procreation.
Absolutely not. That is incorrect.
Incorrect.
Incorrect. The Torah says it is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing for a married couple, right?
Of
To
course, it must be done.
right, to be given pleasure to each other. It's a wonderful thing, right? And what happened was, and Adam and Eve, actually, Cain and Abel were born in the garden before they were kicked out. Right? When it says they were embarrassed, it wasn't embarrassed because they were naked, i.e., that their private parts were exposed.
Because of the light.
They were embarrassed because their light was now all of a sudden covered up, and instead of being this spiritual being, they were this physicality.
So is it true that in this respect, from Jewish point of view, connected with the Torah, it's a lot of misinterpretation that so much guilt attached to sex in
Correct.
Torah.
It has nothing to do with
It shouldn't be
Judaism.
that way.
Nothing to do with Judaism.
I think it's
That's a
Catholicism.
Christian.
It could be, yeah.
It's Catholicism,
Okay,
like the
right.
nuns, the
Right.
priests are
Right,
gonna
right.
have
It
sex.
reminds me of
Right.
a film
Pray to
with
God.
Woody Allen. He has good philosophical lectures on that subject
Mhm.
in one of his movies. I mean, Woody Allen knew how to interpret that.
No, I wouldn't say Woody Allen would be my source of wisdom.
No, but it was
But,
fun. They make you explain it.
right. But you don't know where you are. If you don't know where you're going,
It's bad.
you're going to cause a lot of destruction.
Right.
And then God comes and says, "Where are you, my friends?"
So
Yes.
they were supposed to make teshuva, right?
Right.
Which are there multiple steps of teshuva? Like there's actual stages?
There are 4 steps of tshuva. What are the 4 steps?
Admit first.
Admit that, right? Admit, right? Stop doing what you're doing wrong,
Yeah.
apologize.
right? Accept not to do it again, right? Accept, right? Regret, right? Regret what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. Verbalize it,
And ask for forgiveness.
and ask for forgiveness, right? And ask God to help you, and not to do, or to get put back in the same place and not do it. That's complete tshuva. Regretting and stopping are the first 2 steps, and then it's to verbalize to God.
Yeah.
Right, and that's all they needed to do. All they needed to do was to do that, and guess what?
They would have been saved, and they
We'd
would have
still be in the
stayed,
garden,
and they would continue their
and
immortality.
I had my challah tree.
And immortality as well.
Right.
They would continue to be immortal.
Correct, immortal.
Immortal.
Right. Because all you need to do is a little tshuva. But what happens?
They did exactly everything opposite.
We go ahead and we get ourselves all messed up.
Amazing. This is amazing.
Amazing story. And it's that time of night again.
if they did teshuvah and then they God forgive them, they remain in the garden, and they should be multiplying, and they will have a lot of small light like the babies
Oh, yeah.
all over the garden.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Alrighty, folks. We'll see you all same bat time, same bat station.
So what do we do for